the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Firing up here, Locked On Cardinals Friday edition. Huge week for the podcast. Brack, Alex Clancy. We're joined every Friday by Johnny Venerable of Revenge of the Birds, and huge podcast here because we're going to talk about why this episode is titled Against All Odds. The Arizona Cardinals, the disrespect, this might be the biggest slap in the face of the offseason, and it's been an offseason just full of big moves and then disrespect. So we'll get into that conversation. And also, who needs to be the biggest breakout star for the Arizona Cardinals? Alex and I have kind of debated this a little bit. We did a Throwdown Thursday on it. We'll see where we stand now, plus Johnny's take on it as well. And then the biggest offseason edition, in our opinion, this episode brought to you by Peacock and Williamson. Check out Brian Peacock, former NFL scout Matt Williamson. They're doing a national NFL podcast each and every day, like Alex and I do for the Cardinals. Every game, every team, every move around the NFL. Get your picks, previews, and much more every weekday with the Peacock and Williamson podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. This is a huge day because, well, during this week, both hosts of this podcast were driven to happy tears. One, I had the birth of my son. And then Alex this morning, very early this morning, he had the alert set up for many years to be verified on Twitter. And you are officially, Alex, congratulations, verifiably full of crap. Way to go, buddy.
I do appreciate that. Now I'm followed by Twitter verified. I'm one of the 3.3 million people who are verified on Twitter. It feels phenomenal. Now, Johnny, if you need me to break anything down on how to get there, we can do a separate podcast on that. I've got a stencil set up. It's hope and pray that you have a guy like Nick, our social media dude, host of Locked On Mavericks, who has waded through my crap of messages over the last 6 months, asking him why he isn't doing his job in an effort to get me verified. Finally, it's here, and finally he's released. If you need any help with that, Johnny Venerable from Revenge of the Birds, I'm here. I'm officially here.
I appreciate that. We've had a lot going on in my life. We've moved. I've got 2 young kids, but I would put being verified up as one of my biggest life goals.
I believe it. I
prioritize it. Take you up on that.
I don't know. I've heard rumblings that this was the day that Twitter jumped the shark officially that Alex Clancy is verified. He is a blue check mark, no doubt about it.
Oh God!
Congratulations to Alex. And now all Nick has to deal with is Luka Doncic being a huge diva, and that's now his biggest problem. Yeah. Okay, let's get into the conversation as we have Johnny on here. And I was looking at the odds from Bet Online. And we talk about disrespect. It's such a running theme on this podcast for the Arizona Cardinals because I feel like the national conversation, they don't get the respect that they deserve. And as I see the odds come out, the Arizona Cardinals are an overwhelming favorite to finish 4th in the NFC West. 10-11. You can't even make even money if you bet the Cardinals to finish 4th in the division, which I'm shocked by this. A team that finished 8-8 last year. And then also you haven't had the same division winner in 3 straight seasons, but yet, with the addition of J.J. Watt, Rodney Hudson, a 3rd season from Kyler Murray, they're an overwhelming favorite to finish dead last in their division.
Yep.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Alex.
I mean, here's the thing, Bo, is what's the first thing you look at when these ratings come out? Where are the 49ers? That's the first thing we look at because the 49ers somehow are the Tom Brady Patriots every year. It doesn't make any sense. One of Bo's favorite things to talk about is Kyle Shanahan. 3 years out of the 4, he's been the head coach. They've had double-digit losses. Yet the 49ers are always looked at as the smartest people in the room. They're tied with the Rams, I believe, at 2-1 to win the NFC West. The Cardinals, I'd almost rather have it this way, Bo, because people are thinking about the 2018 Cardinals still. It's better with no expectations than there are with expectations, in my opinion, even though we know around the valley that the stakes have never been higher for Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury at this point. 10-11 is a throw-up slap in the face, though. It is. I mean, You bet 100 to win 90, I think is what it is. It's like, how is that possible for them to finish fourth? But agreed, it's kind of egregious, but this is where we are with Cardinals.
Yeah, I think I echo all of your sentiments, and I think it goes back to one individual, and that's who's running the show on the sideline. I think there's an overwhelming amount of disrespect and angst against Cliff Kingsbury for a lot of different reasons. That, to me, is the biggest factor involved, because I think when you look at the landscape of this division, the majority of people you talk to would say that the other three coaches in the division are top 10 coaches in the NFL. And then there's a ginormous gap. And then you've got this Texas Tech cast off, probably somewhere between 20 to 25, maybe worse, depending on who you talk to. And I think that gap alone, because the talent level is so substantial in this division, you've got an individual who has never had a winning record consistently at Texas Tech, who hasn't had a winning record in the NFL, but has improved to some degree. I also think it doesn't help that a lot of people watch the Cardinals falter and fall flat on their face at the end of last year. That Week 16 game against the 49er team that had nothing to play for, Week 17 against a backup for the LA Rams, those were nationally televised games, and Cliff was somewhat exposed in both of those games. And so people have that kind of fresh in their mind. I think there's also a little bit of a notion that maybe the Cardinals had their opportunity last year out of division, playing the likes of the NFC East, having that fast start. And now you look at, okay, well, they don't get to play the Cowboys without Dak Prescott. They don't get to play a slew of backup quarterbacks. They went 2-4 in the division last year after starting 2-0. They've never beaten Sean McVay. Russell Wilson's only missed the playoffs one time. But I'm with you guys. I think, again, I don't think anybody expects them to be the favorite. Right now, you can get them at right around 4-1 odds to win the division. And that's not terrible odds. And you look at other teams that are considered like basement dwellers, like the Lions and such. Like the Cardinals have significantly better odds than any other fourth place team in the NFL. But I think where the frustration is for the fan base is this is year 3 of a rebuild. Same consistent coaching staff, same defensive coordinator, head coach, same GM, right? This is when the plan should be blossoming. In fact, Kyler Murray on a rookie contract for 3 years. We shouldn't be talking about a fourth place team. We should be talking about a team that has playoff and championship aspirations. And instead it's like, can they get over 500? And that, to me, I think is where the frustration lies. So I'm with you guys. I think it's more of an admin question, because you look on the surface, any objective NFL fan would look at the Cardinals and say, yeah, they have a slew of talent. That's easily a top 12 to 16 roster in the NFL, depending on who you talk to. Heck, it could be better than Seattle's roster. It could be better in terms of depth than LA and the San Francisco 49ers. Certainly they have a better quarterback. But I think this is a head coaching league, and so many people think for reasons that really aren't fair, because Cliff Kingsbury is not Freddie Kitchens, but he's looked like that that's the perception of him to so many fans that are outside the Valley.
Yeah, and I'm in the camp where the jury's still out on Cliff, and this is going to be the year. This is a make or break year. We're really going to find out. And a lot of people, I understand the skepticism that they don't believe he has what it takes. He's overwhelmed and he's overmatched at the NFL level. But I still am under the belief in just looking at the progression, the development of the quarterback, the offense, where it's gone from 18 to 19 to 20. But this is a year where we're really going to find out a lot about K2. But obviously, I understand why the perception is he can't do it. And that's what these odds are telling us. The good point you made was, yeah, the Arizona Cardinals were the favorite to finish fourth. But as far as the other teams that are predicted to finish fourth, none of them have the best odds as high as the Arizona Cardinals to also win the division. 5-1, according to our friends at BetOnline. If you think it's a good bet, go to betonline.ag. Put some money down now if you'd like. I mean, looking at the other odds as far as where the Arizona Cardinals are supposed to finish, it's you've got them finishing third, 16-5, second, 19-4, and then first is 5-1. Rams 2-1 to finish first. So are the Niners with that new defensive coordinator, with the quarterback position kind of being in flux. And then the Seattle Seahawks are 5-2. Could be an interesting bet as well to finish first. It's Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Bo Brock, Alex Clancy, verified blue check mark And, of course, Johnny Venerable, Revenge of the Birds. Listen to the podcast. Read his work there, revengeofthebirds.com. Coming up, who needs to be the biggest breakout star for the Arizona Cardinals in 2021 for them to have success? We'll talk about it. Plus, coming up after that, the biggest addition. And what's the biggest miss so far of the offseason? We might actually put that in front. We'll see where we go in this podcast. It's Locked On Cardinals. Talking about Bet Online, you had the Suns. They lost last night. You got the Eastern Conference Finals continuing. You want some action on that? Bet Online's the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season in full swing. D-backs stink. You might want to make some money by betting against them. You can track all the action as well. Bet Online. Get all the latest news, odds, info for your sporting needs. Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, UFC, MMA action, or reality TV, YouTube star fighting each other. You can get action. Before the next pitch, head over to Bet Online on your laptop, mobile device. Check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get in the game as the team preps for its run in the playoffs. Head to the website. Use your cell. Sign up today. Receive your 50% welcome bonus. You put in $100, you have $50 free, not even yours, to make yours and build your stack. Welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. All right, back here, Johnny Venerable. Do you have Johnny Football anymore? That used to be your Twitter handle, right?
No, not so much. No.
All right.
I mean, it's fun.
Johnny Venerable and then Alex Clancy. What are you guys talking about on the Revenge of the Birds podcast lately, Johnny?
Well, it's a lot of it. Unfortunately, it mirrors what you guys have done with Zaven Collins and that discussion. You can only talk about it so much. It's frustrating. I wrote the breaking article for our website, and then just got a slew of Twitter messages talking about like the normalcy of driving 35 over in a residential area. And I can't talk about it anymore. I'm glad no one was hurt. I'm glad he's supposedly, doing okay. The team hasn't acknowledged it. It's just, again, I don't condone that. I understand it wasn't, manslaughter or anything like that, but he was arrested. There's only been one player arrested since the NFL draft, and it was an Arizona Cardinal first-round pick. I think it's more the optics with that whole thing. But goodness, you would thought it was a parking ticket the way people came to support him on Twitter. And I by no means think that Zaven is a bad guy. I don't think this is going to affect his career in one iota. I just think that mantra, it's associated with Arizona now. This team, this franchise, they have an arrest every so often. And unfortunately, a lot of it involves, motor vehicles. So they're not very buttoned up right now. And that's not a direct, insult to Zaven, but it's a reflection of the ownership and who's running the show. And I think that, again, they better do some winning this year, or that noise is going to only grow louder.
I mean, he could have taken out Alex Clancy, who lives in that area. We all know that area. I mean, we're kind of desensitized to seeing probably a luxury vehicle doing way too fast in that area. I mean, we know it right around Chaparral in Scottsdale. Dumb move.
Yeah, it was right around the corner from where Michael Floyd got pulled over and gave one of the most epic TMZ drunken rants you've ever seen. It was Zaven Collins and Johnny. So the way I equated it, I think Bo was busy having a kid, so he wasn't there with me that day. I equated it to, priorities. I equated it to a college kid getting a credit card and maxing it out before they get it in the mail, where it's like you get one free pass, and luckily nobody got hurt. That's why you're having the conversation. But it's not a rite of passage by any stretch like maxing out your first credit card is, but it's something like that where you're going to pay for it. It's going to sting. It's going to hurt your credit. And then when you grow up, you'll build that credit back up, not only with, the community and everything, but with the team. It should be much ado. You're right. We're very desensitized to it here. But yeah, hopefully much ado, and seems like a good kid. So, I mean, we'll see.
He really does it. That was the biggest thing about it is Zaven Collins during his time at Tulsa and during this draft process, and you see the videos and you learn about the kid, and he just seems like a special young man, and it just proves that you can do everything right, and then you take one misstep and you're going to be put in check, and hopefully it opened up his eyes the right way. It seems like it, but you never know. I mean, it could be a red flag, Robert Kimdichie in the pre-draft process, and it doesn't resonate and it doesn't set in, and he's not a professional, despite the stupid, news coming out of Seattle that he's going to be some guy that's going to be a reclamation project. I don't believe that. But, Zaven Collins, it seems like a guy that can really kind of hold himself accountable for a dumb move that he pulled earlier this week. Locked On Cardinals, Bo, Alex, and Johnny. Let me ask you, we'll start with Johnny here in just kind of an elevator pitch on who you believe needs to be the breakout star for the Arizona Cardinals in order to achieve success, avoid being the favorite to finish dead last in the NFC West in 2021.
Yeah, I wrote an article about it about a week ago, or maybe like 5 days ago. I think it's Byron Murphy. I think it's a hair over Isaiah Simmons just because Byron is entering year 3. I look at Byron as a first-round pick, and he's the 33rd overall pick in the draft. Coming into this year, clearly you get, Patrick Peterson leaves, Drake Patrick leaves, and now you've got this young man who clearly is being elevated by his coaching staff, somebody who the organization, they say they're high on. Well, I need to see him play 90+% of the time. I mean, his coverage snaps went down last year, the second consecutive year in Vance Joseph's system, but he's been running with the first team defense this entire offseason, and most notably, a lot of that time has been covering on the outside rather than his traditional slot position. And goodness, if you've seen his physical appearance change between last year and now, I mean, he looks like a completely different player. And, oh, by the way, he's 23 years old. So this is somebody, again, I think that, of course, they wanted J.C. Horn. They wanted Patrick Surtain. Just didn't fall that way. They could have traded up for Asante Samuel Jr. I think part of the reason that they didn't go all out and remaking that cornerback room. I mean, they signed Malcolm Butler for a modest 1-year deal. Robert Alford's back for pennies on the dollar. But I think it's their belief in Byron Murphy that he has the ability to provide some upside at that position that we really haven't seen since Pete Peterson. So he would be my number one. But if I had a 1A to that, it would be Isaiah Simmons. Isaiah Simmons, especially now with the uncertainty around Zaven Collins' maturity a little bit, it looks like Jordan Hicks isn't going to be on the team. We don't know what's going on there. Devondre Campbell's not on the roster. Simmons had a slow start last year, I think much in part because there was no offseason. He's the 8th pick in the draft. And now you've got this defense that is, I think, stacked with talent, specifically in the front 7. He's going to be expected to call a large majority of the defense and get them in situations to be successful against the McVays and the Shanahans of the world. I think he's right there. Those are two players that you look at. If the Cardinals are going to have success, not only this year, but for the next half decade plus, they need those guys to be not good players, but great. You're getting nice extensions in a couple of years. People around the league know their names. Those would be the two guys I'd highlight.
It's interesting. I've shifted on this. Bo and I talked about this. I don't know if it was earlier this week or last week. I think it's simpler than we're making it. It's got to be AJ Green. And let me tell you why. So Chase Edmonds and James Conner, I'm not going to step on Bo's toes if he chooses Chase Edmonds here, but we've made our bed. They've made their bed with the cornerback room, with the front 7, and with the running back room. The strength of this team has to be the offense. It has to be the offense. Otherwise, why is Cliff Kingsbury here? It's a very simple question. Why the hell is he here if he can't coach defense? So why is the strength not supposed to be the offense? You have Kyler Murray coming into his 3rd season, which is his, the true make or break. How high can your ceiling be year? And you now have a bona fide number 2 wide receiver. Remove the last 2 years, remove last year especially, where that was a crap hole of an organization more than it already is in Cincinnati, especially after Joe Burrow went down and they had no offensive line and Ryan Finley was their guy. And then Joe Mixon goes down. It was a terrible year statistically, pretty much for the whole organization. If AJ Green can put up 1,000 yards receiving, which is 58 yards a game in a 17-game season, he can stay healthy and he can catch 7 or 8 touchdowns, that's where the impact needs to be made, is in the wide receiver room. Because when it comes down to all of this, it's going to be Kyler Murray's total yards per game that's going to get the Cardinals more wins. That's it. It's Kyler Murray. So great defense, that's fine. Their defense was good enough last year.
It was.
If their offense can step forward with AJ Green, now you could say Rondale Moore, you could say Christian Kirk. I don't trust Christian Kirk, and I haven't seen Rondale Moore play in the last 2 years pretty much. I know what AJ Green can do with his core. And if you need a breakout guy, first of all, it's not going to be tough to define breakout from what he's done over the last couple of years. But if he can flirt with 800, 900, 1,000 yards receiving and 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, that's where we're going to see the most impact on the offensive side of the ball, not rushing the ball. It's going to be in the wide receiver room.
You just anointed a 32-year-old a breakout player for the Arizona Cardinals.
Making $6 million on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
all of those things are true.
It would be I think it becomes necessary that they get production from somebody opposite DeAndre Hopkins, no doubt about it. I mean, I think I would have gone with Andy Isabella over AJ Green, just because I think he's more of a proven commodity, and last year was more of a anomaly on his resume. I don't know. I mean, Christian Kirk is ahead of him. Rondale Moore, I would have ahead of him. But look, regardless, they need somebody opposite, DeAndre Hopkins to break out on that offense. I even would say, and continue this conversation, Cliff Kingsbury needs to be the breakout star. He needs to change the narrative around him and change the idea and perception that he's at the bottom tier of the NFL coaches. The only coaches that were ranked below Cliff Kingsbury recently in a ranking, trying to remember whose ranking it was, Alex, was it Pro Football Network? Were guys that just got hired, and John Gruden and Zach Taylor, who's lost 1,000 games in 3 years. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So, Cliff Kingsbury either, improves that he's the guy that they hired, or next year he's fired, or they just completely put the pressure on to hire an OC, which I was shocked that they didn't do this offseason, which brings up the next conversation in the next segment about what the biggest addition was and what the biggest misfire was this offseason. It's Locked On Cardinals. It's Bo. It's Alex. It's Johnny Venerable. Let me tell you about the most vulnerable I've ever been. It's standing right there in an auto parts store trying to figure out what I need to purchase for my car. That's over, because this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers, makes, models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating question, why wait there where the person behind the counter just scrambles and orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand in their warehouse that they happen to carry? Your computer's just as easy and has access to rockauto.com at your home, and it's right there in your pocket on your cell. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. It has prices that are reliably low for every customer and have everything you need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On Cardinals on How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. And now let's talk about Built Bar. Alex, Jared reached out to us yesterday on Twitter. He congratulated my new family, and he said it might be a little early to start feeding my son Built Bars. And I agree, but I also disagree, because it's the most delicious, nutritious protein bar on the planet. I want to cook this thing down and put it in my veins. It's unbelievable. Okay. And you can save 15% on it by going to BuiltBar.com and typing in Locked 15 on your next order. They've got incredible limited time flavors that are coming back for the summer: orange, I believe raspberry. They've got the German chocolate cake to go along with the 9 OG flavors that you can always rely upon. You've got the setup where it's just 17 grams of muscle packing protein, only about 130 calories, 4 grams of fat. Unbelievable. Go to BuiltBar.com. Buy yourself a mix box. Figure out which flavor you like the best. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to save yourself 15% on BuiltBar.com. So we've got our final segment here. It's going to be shorty. Bo, Brock, Alex Clancy, Johnny Venerable. We'll let Johnny go first here. Johnny, as far as the biggest offseason addition for the Arizona Cardinals, we're staying with the elevator pitchers here so we can keep it short.
Yeah, I think it's Watt. I go back and forth with he and Rodney Hudson, but I think just the impact that Watt has on the locker room, on the culture of this franchise, the respectability I think he brings, even at this age. It's close. Hudson is going to do, I think, more on the field. He's closer to his peak in being a top 3 to 5 center in the NFL, and I think a lot of people would consider Watt certainly past his prime. But I just think the gravitas that J.J. Watt brings, the energy, you see him on the sideline at Suns games. I mean, would it be a shocker if he has a great season this year, if he was like the co-face of the franchise suddenly with Kyler Murray, and he gets another contract from this team and plays well into his 30s? I know the Cardinals certainly hope so. So it has to be Watt kind of by default. But the Rodney Hudson move, I think, is the most under the radar, especially on a national perspective. When I hear about the additions that the Cardinals have made from media, it's like, well, AJ Green and James Conner are washed up and blah, blah, blah. Nobody talks about Rodney Hudson because that move was just in the height of free agency, and they traded him for a song, for a top 3 player at his position. So I definitely think that has been undervalued and will pay the most dividends. But Watt, to me, You just can't. I don't think you can measure what he brings to this franchise, and hopefully we see that pay dividends this fall.
You want to talk about any other ones? You just ruined my thunder here. It's not. No, the interesting part. So Rodney Hudson was what I was going to say, but
yeah.
I think the biggest gap in a position from last year to this year is running back.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You know, like, so with Kenyon Drake gone.
I thought you were going to say center. I thought you were just going to.
No, I wasn't. No, because listen, the best offensive lineman the Cardinals will ever have will always be Kyler Murray's legs. So yes, having Rodney Hudson in here helps. But if you look at, say the Cardinals didn't draft a running back and they didn't sign James Conner, and you have Jonathan Ward and Chase Edmonds in the backfield. Like, I know the biggest breakout star I said is AJ Green, and I believe that. I'm not just saying this for clicks or anything like that to piss Bo off. With James Conner, there will be stability when he's on the field, and you need stability from your running back room. 100%. We don't know what Chase Edmonds can do as the RB1 or RB1A. We don't know yet. But what we do know is that James Conner can fill the void left by Kenyon Drake at least 80% when he's on the field.
Yep.
And that's important. It's very small wins, and that is a small win that could prove huge dividends for the Cardinals in 2021. But obviously, J.J. Watt changing the culture already, Rodney Hudson doing what he'll do to anchor to be the spine of the offensive line. I still think, to answer the question, though, the biggest acquisition is James Conner just to fill that void from Kenyon Drake from last year.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with that. You almost sounded smart with the saying the biggest gap between, the offseason additions between Mason Cole and Rodney Hudson. I mean, I would absolutely.
I thought he was going too.
I would be right there. That's why Alex Clancy's the best. He's a wild card, baby. That's why he's verified now. But I will say I'm going to go with my second, maybe third biggest addition, but it filled a need that was huge. With Patrick Peterson exiting is Malcolm Butler. It's going to be huge. He's going to be huge. His play, along with Byron Murphy being, a big breakout candidate for the Arizona Cardinals, to solidify that secondary. But this front seven can also make things easier there. But Rodney Hudson, number one ranked center, according to Pro Football Focus. They disrespected the Cardinals all offseason long, but not Rodney Hudson. He's getting all the respect. We'll continue. What was the biggest miss? We'll get into it next week for the Arizona Cardinals as far as the offseason goes. What did they not kind of figure out? Could be the running back position, as Alex mentioned just a few moments ago. Follow Johnny Venerable on Twitter at Johnny Venerable. Follow Alex Clancy. He's got a blue check mark. You got to do it. At Clancy's Corner. Follow me, BOBRACK. Bo Brock here. Of course, the show at Locked On AZ Cards. Subscribe on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts. Follow along. Thanks for listening. You guys have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.